Alright everyone, welcome to today's video, which is brought to you by Practical CBT. Quick practical workouts for your mental health. And yes, it is a Sunday. I wasn't planning on doing a video today, but I kind of feel like I have to, just based on what's happened over the past few days since we last did one of these kind of solo videos with just me and the camera, I think on Thursday. A lot's happened. None of it has been good. So yeah, strap yourself in. So yeah, got a few stories, I think 2/3 kind of stories to discuss. The final two are kind of linked together. But yeah, as I say, things are pretty bleak at Celtic at the moment, so it's not going to be a particularly positive video, but I do think it's necessary at the moment, and certainly, you know, viewer numbers and all of that stuff would suggest that people are quite into Celtic content at the moment. So yeah, first story, and this is a couple of days old, so I won't spend too long on this, but on Friday we got some quotes from Daizen Maeda, who is on international duty at the moment with Japan in the United States. They actually played overnight. They had a 0-0 draw against Mexico in California. I think Daizen came on for the final 20 minutes. Japan play USA on Tuesday. But in terms of the Daizen stuff, yeah, he revealed to Japanese media that he had made it clear to Celtic that he wanted to leave and, quote, take the next step during the summer transfer window. So, yeah, there was interest in Daizen. I know Brentford were mentioned earlier on in the summer, so quite possibly they would have been one of the clubs in for him. There was talk of Daizen leaving Celtic all the way up until deadline day. So he actually arrived late to the Japan camp, I think late by a day, basically because his future was still up in the air going into deadline day last Monday. So this isn't like something that happened much earlier in the summer. This was right at the end of the window. We thought we could have lost Daizen. Just very briefly, to give Stevie a little bit of credit, he did kind of call this at the time.
I had heard that Daizen Maeda had it agreed verbally that he was going to be off from Celtic, and it was going to be his final game was after Ibrox. Now, he also backed me up. There's a guy you say is quite in the know at Kerrydale Street, is that right?
Aye.
I'm not going to name names.
I don't remember his name, but he said that as well.
There was a fee agreed between the clubs, and I think those personal terms were sorted out. But Celtic has said to Daizen Maeda, play against Kairat or Mate, play against Rangers, and then we'll let you go on deadline day. And then it's just been radio silence. Now, that was the version of events that I have heard.
So Daizen felt that he had come to an understanding with the club that he would leave. I believe I read that these discussions have been going on since the end of last season, which kind of coincides with Daizen's dip in form, which I think is interesting. He had expected to move away from Celtic. However, the club couldn't sign a replacement. Therefore, he was told, you can't go. So there are kind of two parts to this for me. The first part is the very obvious bit. We now have a player who is, you know, putting it simply, is unhappy to still be at Celtic. He would rather have left the club, and we'll wait and see how that plays out this season. We obviously have recent kind of history with that happening and players being kept too long, and it kind of blew up in our face at the end. There is also, you know, a scenario, I think, where Daizen, who is one of the kind of hardest working footballers we've ever seen play for Celtic, and not just in terms of the running he does, but just his application to training and matches, his kind of, motivation hasn't seemed to dip so far, maybe up until recently. So there is a chance, I think, after the international break, given that he is now guaranteed to be with us, certainly for the next 5 months, and given that it's a World Cup year for Japan and he's trying to force his way into their team and he has to play well to do that at club level, I think there's a chance that he does kind of end up doing pretty well for us again. But there's also a chance that, as I say, this blows up in our face and we have Daizen, a player who kind of wanted to leave the club, still playing for us, and probably a number of other players in the same position. And again, you're thinking about the comments Brendan Rodgers made, I think before the Kairat tie, or certainly before one of the Kairat legs, when he spoke about your wages are still going to be in your bank and they're going to be from Celtic. And now we have this kind of context of Daizen stuff. It all makes a bit of sense. The second part of this for me is the fact that Daizen is actually publicly saying this. He's not kept this to himself. He's literally, a few days after all this has happened, he's been in front of the Japanese media and he's kind of gone for it. And obviously, like, we don't know exactly how he said it and all of that stuff, and the translation can be a little bit ropey, I think, at times. But it's very obvious that he's, let the Japanese media know that he wanted to move away from Celtic, and this is, that wasn't able to happen. So I think the fact he's come out with it shows that he's pretty pissed off with, how the club have acted in that. And again, that's kind of even worse, I think, than the first part. We've not just got an unhappy player, we've kind of got a pissed off unhappy player as well. And I know people can take the pissed off route themselves with Daizen, and, he's under contract and we pay his wages and all that stuff. And, I actually do agree with that. I still expect Daizen to come back and perform well for us and, give his absolute all. And I do think he will do that. And, that is the minimum that should be expected of a Celtic player. As I say, you're still contracted. But I think the wider point here for me anyway is that, as much as fans, we didn't want to lose Daizen this summer, when you look at it, kind of taking the emotion out of it, this summer was the time to sell Daizen, coming off, how he did last season. I think he's 27, is he? So it's kind of this summer you're going to get the most money for him, is selling him there. The issue that we have as a club at the moment is that we can't replace players, or more to the point, we don't replace players. And there's numerous examples of that recently. Nicholas Kuhn, Kyogo Furuhashi, Matt O'Reilly as well. So we're kind of stuck in this place. And there's a bit of a myth here, I think, that Celtic have this brilliant transfer model where we buy for cheap, we develop players, and then we sell them on at the right time. We don't sell them on at the right time. Okay, maybe occasionally Matt O'Reilly, something like that. I think what happens with most players is we hold them and hold them and hold them, basically up until the point where they're demanding they want to leave. Nicholas Kuhn, Kyogo Furuhashi, now Daizen, and then we sell them at that point. So we're kind of stuck in this middle place here where, other top European clubs have this huge turnover virtually every season. Feyenoord, me and John touched on that in the Celtic Way Weekly. I think they lost 4 or 5 key players this summer, but they signed maybe 6 or 7. We kind of have it in our head, I think, as a club that you can only lose 1, maybe 2, when the reality is we should be moving these guys on every summer, changing the squad up, selling players at the right time and replacing them well. But the whole kind of transfer strategy falls down with the replacement thing, because it's as if we're not capable of replacing these top players. So we just hold on to guys like Hatate and Daizen and possibly Cameron Carter-Vickers till we get to the point that we might have reached now where we've kind of gone to the well too many times with them. The well is dry. Anyway, so much for not spending ages on that. The big story that I'm sure you want me to talk about, and I'm sure you're talking about, was the statement released by the club last night. A pretty kind of big move from the club, to be honest, to put a statement out. It came out shortly before 9 p.m. on Saturday evening. I was going to say what the point or purpose of the statement was there, but I'm not really sure. I guess maybe to quell the frustration and anger that the Celtic support are feeling right now. But if that was the aim, it has failed spectacularly. It was a lengthy statement, over 1,000 words. So I'm not going to read it here, take up far too much time. I'm going to make the assumption you've read it in full anyway. But it could pretty much be summed up by that Limmy meme: don't back down, double down, because that's what Celtic are doing. It was the club going on the attack here, blaming the media, which we'll come on to, blaming UEFA financial regulations, blaming other clubs, and bringing up Rangers going bust in 2012. Not by name, but we all know what they were referring to. And as a number of people have pointed out, the fact that it was like a faceless or a nameless statement, nobody at the club had the guts to put their name at the bottom of it, I think speaks volumes, specifically speaks volumes about Michael Nicholson, the chief executive. It was filled with contradictions for me in the kind of opening bit where they tried to butter us up. Celtic say at the start, the club takes Celtic supporters' views extremely seriously. No, you don't. That's just something you're saying, so it seems like you do. If you took supporters' views extremely seriously, we'd have had anyone at the club actually putting themselves out there and giving some sort of interview. We haven't had that at all. We've just had this faceless statement put out. They also say the club understands the concerns and frustrations which have arisen. The statement doesn't suggest that you do. The fact that you haven't taken any responsibility doesn't suggest that you do. We are always willing to learn lessons. I guess that's just something you're saying. It's one thing to say it, but to actually learn your lessons. What is it? 7 Champions League, 7 failed Champions League qualification campaigns now. What lessons were learned from the last summer transfer window last year or the year before, when we left a lot of our business right up until the end, and did the same this year as well, and had a bit of a meltdown on deadline day. The club is committed to engagement with supporters. I'm just going to repeat that for you. Celtic say the club is committed to engagement with supporters. Like, I don't even have to try and debunk that myth. Right, in terms of the kind of more substantial, juicier bits of this statement, Celtic say transfer activity attracts enormous attention and speculation, particularly across social media, and the mainstream media has commoditised the transfer window in its relentless search for content. In connection with Celtic, we recognise that debate around this subject reflects the passion of our supporters. Unfortunately, as is often the case in the media and social media, there is inaccurate or misleading information in circulation. So they're clearly raging with the media here for some reason. The transfer window failings aren't the club's fault, it's the media's fault. And yeah, I mean, personally, I think if they felt so strongly about this, maybe they could have offered up some specific examples of where they feel they've been kind of done a disservice by the media, and that'd be interesting, but they haven't done that at all. And what I would say is, and again, this is a point a lot of people are making, I think some of the most damaging things we've heard about Celtic this or during the transfer window didn't actually come from the media. They came from like figures at other clubs. So the guy at Go Ahead Eagles, I thought, was like an incredibly damaging thing to say about Celtic. And I actually think there's a wee dig at him later in this statement that we'll come on to. The Swansea City manager as well made comments at the end of the window that just suggested that Celtic don't have things in order. The other thing I'd say here, and this is the big theme of, I was going to say this statement, it's the big theme of Celtic as a club right now, or sorry, not Celtic as a club, the people in the big powerful positions at Celtic being completely tone deaf about this. Like, why are you going and attacking the media? The media aren't the issue here. The Celtic support aren't angry with the media. We are on occasions, and like a lot of the time it's totally valid. But right now the anger is with the board. It's not with the media. So trying to bring the media in, it just comes across so badly. On the actual excuses, they bring up UEFA Financial Sustainability Regulation, so FSR, which is basically the new name for financial fair play. So FSR has replaced FFP. I'm not an expert in this, but I think, having done a bit of reading, it's basically just like the next step for FFP. FFP was kind of like the founding thing that got all this financial fair play on the road. And now FSR, I think, is a kind of evolution of that. And there's kind of various parts to this, but the main thing here, and the thing that the club touch on, quite simply, club spending on transfers, player wages, coach wages, and like agent fees. So kind of anything in terms of recruitment or whatever, is spending on that is limited to 70% of a club's revenue. So that's kind of the headline feature of this FSR. Celtic say we can never compromise the financial integrity of the club. In short, throwing money at transfers and contracts is not a sustainable route to success, as many other clubs have found, to the detriment of their supporters. Laughing at Rangers, I always love that. Top class, lads. Where was I? I've actually forgotten where I was because I was so busy laughing at Rangers. So this 70% figure that the club are so worried about, so the football finance expert Swish Rambo did some calculations in a piece they put on their site last November. I think it's a piece that actually used for a video not so long ago. And they this was for the 2023-24 season, so it's kind of 18 months or so out of date, but it obviously be fairly accurate even these days. They gave a ratio of spending to revenue, and remember 70% is like the limit for UEFA. You can't be above that. They gave it as 43% for Celtic in 23-24 season. So yeah, a good bit under the 70% kind of figure that Celtic are extremely worried about. So yeah, don't quite get that excuse, if I'm totally honest. And yeah, just going back to that that last statement when they're bringing up the Rangers stuff and they're saying we can never compromise the financial integrity of the club. We can't throw money at transfers and contracts. Again, totally missing the point. No Celtic fan is asking the club to be reckless in terms of their transfer spending. We're not even asking the club to spend every pound that we bring in transfers on transfers. We're just asking for the club to be proactive, ambitious, organised, and for them to strengthen the squad in an adequate way in a efficient time frame. Moving on, they say, our clear goal is to secure new signings as early in each transfer window as possible so that players can integrate quickly and contribute from the outset of the season. Unfortunately, it is not always possible to conclude transfers either within the timescales that we target or at all. There are many factors and challenges at play in the global transfer market, many of which are out with the club's control, including selling clubs seeking fees beyond their valuation or waiting until the end of the transfer window to seek the maximum price, and players choosing to join another club or requesting contractual terms we cannot reasonably meet within our financial model. Again, absolutely no responsibility taken at all by the club. It's the selling clubs' faults. They're wanting too much money, they're wanting to wait too long till the end of the window to get too much money, or it's the players' faults, they're wanting too much money in wages. I was kind of thinking when I was reading those comments, like, I wonder what's like Celtic's valuations of these players. I just wonder if they're just massively kind of out of date. Like, I wonder if they still feel we're back in like 2010 or something, because so you think like the obvious one, the kind of maybe, was it the main transfer saga of the summer? I'm trying to think. Jakob Braham, the Go-Ahead Eagles player. It's a really interesting one because you have their club being very public about things. Again, we'll come on to this in a sec. But we got kind of their version of things, and they were very public in saying, Jakob Braham, we want, £6 million? I think between £5 and £6 million. And I really don't think that's a ridiculous valuation. I think it's a very fair valuation for, I think, a 21-year-old Danish under-21 international, a guy who had scored 10 goals from midfield in the Eredivisie the previous season. In 2025, £6 million for a player of that level is a very fair valuation, I would say. Yet Celtic offer 3 times for him, and our largest offer of those 3 is £3 million. So I just wonder if our valuations are just massively off here. Successful transfers can only be negotiated privately. It would be impossible to secure players if every stage were conducted in public. From time to time, other parties may also seek to create pressure by leaking information to the media. The club's position is clear. Transfer business will remain confidential until agreements are concluded and announced by the club. No Celtic fans that I've come across are asking for every single detail of transfers to be made public straight away. Because virtually, well, I don't think there's any club out there that will actually do that. Like, we, as fans, we understand that transfers will be conducted in private, and the only time you'll ever hear about a transfer from Celtic is when the player has been officially announced or is being officially announced. We all understand that. That's how it's worked for years and years. That's how it will continue to work. That's not an issue with the Celtic support. The issue is that we're not acting like a modern day club, and we want Celtic to do that. We don't need to know everything that's happening. We just need to know that what's happening is going to be good and is going to get the squad to the right place at the right time. But as I said earlier, I do wonder if that's a dig at the go-ahead Eagles chief, who's very public about everything and did slam the club and compared them to Rangers, which they will have absolutely have hated in the Celtic boardroom. That's like the cardinal sin, comparing you unfavourably to Rangers. So I reckon that's another dig there. So we can have the media, we can have go-ahead Eagles chief, digs at both of them. They continue, it follows, therefore, that much of what is written in the media or online about our transfer dealings is inaccurate. We also understand that this leads to frustration among supporters. Again, blaming the media, and again, what I would say is that if you feel incredibly strongly about this, give us some specific details about where you feel you've been treated unfairly by the media. And sorry, I should be clear, I'm not like saying the media are perfect here. I just think this is like just a really strange route for the club to go down at the moment. Like, there's not even seen much from any fans at all saying, the media have given Celtic a real rough ride here. Like, our issue is with those in the boardroom. And yeah, I think, to be honest, now I'm saying all that, I think quite simply, in a nutshell, this statement is trying to get fans on side by turning us against the media. And again, they'll know that a lot of us, me and you, can be distrustful of the media at times. But they think they can take the heat off themselves by turning it on the media, and they think that people will lap this up. That for me is like the kind of the irony, or I guess not even ironic, about Celtic doing this statement last night. I bet when they clicked publish or send or whatever on that statement, I bet they were all quite chuffed with themselves in that boardroom. I bet they felt that was a cracking statement. Genuinely, I believe that they would have felt that was a great statement that answered all the kind of various question marks over the club at the moment, and also get some wee digs in at Rangers and the media. And I honestly think they would have thought that a lot of fans would have come on board after that statement, which kind of sums it all up, that's how they would have felt, that they felt that was like an acceptable statement to put out in 2025. And by the way, it should be pointed out when they're talking about, slamming the media here, that statement came out on the very same day that we had an exclusive from the Scottish Sun, who I'll need to double check, but I think are a media organisation, where someone at the club has clearly spoken to the Sun and basically put Brendan Rodgers under the bus. In this article, the quote, one source told Sun Sport, senior figures inside the club believe Rodgers is engineering his exit. What he said in public has torn the club apart. On and off the record discussions are creating division throughout the club. He's the only manager in the club's history who has repeatedly questioned things. Again, just like the media, they are capitalising on something that Celtic supporters are pretty distrustful over. Brendan Rodgers, the most high-profile exit we've had from the club in a number of years, when he left for Leicester City in 2019, and they're playing on that to try and take the heat off themselves. They are, bringing up Brendan Rodgers, questioning his loyalty. Like, it really is, it's really quite bad when you think about it. What I feel personally right now that Celtic need people in that boardroom to take accountability and responsibility for their actions. To admit that they are getting things badly wrong at the club at the moment in virtually every department. Things are not good at Celtic right now. And they need to, as I say, admit responsibility for that, to come out and to say that, not to go on the offensive and make excuse after excuse. Kind of reminds me, and I never get political here, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of the government during, the UK government during COVID and all of those kind of various excuses that were made by the Conservative government and, never taking accountability for various things. Kind of reminds me a bit of that, what's going on at Celtic at the moment. Like, there's just no accountability from anyone there. But it's crying out for someone to do that, and for someone to, or people to, look at how things can be better going forward. How are they capable of changing their methods and their mindset? And I don't think they are. And if they're not capable, they need to get other people in who are better qualified to take Celtic forward in 2025. It's not the early 21st century anymore. It's in 2025 now, and I feel like Celtic are pretty dated. That's what we need in this situation for things to change. Not for them just to go on the offensive and to take on the media and Brendan Rodgers and mention Rangers as well. And yeah, I'll be honest, everyone, I've kind of been plodding along in recent weeks, and the transfer stuff, it was a long transfer window. It was incredibly frustrating. It obviously ended horrendously. And yeah, I think I was pretty critical on deadline day. The Kairat tie was a disaster. I think it was a really, really bad episode for Celtic to lose to Kairat and miss out on the Champions League. Like, that was just not acceptable given where we'd been last season in Europe. But again, wasn't ideal. This, and I know people, you'll have different moments that kind of tipped you over the edge. That statement last night was it for me. They never fail to amaze me with how out of touch they are and how little responsibility they take. And I guarantee you, even when they see the reaction to that statement, which they will have seen, their attitude will be, oh, we just can't win here. There's nothing we can do now. We've done a statement, we've answered their stuff, and they're still not happy. And that is the attitude running from the top of the club at the moment. And it's a bit of a mess, and this isn't going away. I think they feel it will with a few wins, but I really hope it doesn't this time. Obviously, I hope Celtic win, but I really hope this fan frustration continues and we can get some sort of meaningful change, because we've had enough of how this club acts and the insulting nature they speak to us as fans, and that is just typified. If you want evidence of that, just read that statement last night and some of the comments they make in there, and even the stuff, and I'll use a disingenuous word again, the stuff at the end about thanking Celtic supporters for their unmatched passion and commitment. We all share the same ambition to see Celtic succeed on the pitch while remaining strong and secure off it. Oh, it's just like words, and it's just so disingenuous. I think that's the key word I would do. But yeah, I think the statement last night is only going to focus minds anymore. Anyway, it is Sunday and I'm going to be wasting my entire day editing this. So I'll get on with that. And yeah, I'll chat to you tomorrow, everyone.